It's a massive, massive week for Baylor football recruiting, and they just pulled down the most exciting guy they were targeting. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports. Today's episode brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime it is in the recruiting world. It's 4th of July week, and Baylor has set off the fireworks. They got a massive signing today, yesterday, as you're listening to this. Big time one to bolster up the offense for that 2025 class. And then we said goodbye to one of our great neighbors. Would love to talk about some of the best times that we left them going home crying. And a great Baylor team will get its due this year. And no, I'm not talking about the 2013 and 14 squads. This one, iconic, will also be at McLean Stadium this fall. Starting with the big news from yesterday. The fireworks are getting set to go for 4th of July week, 4th of July. And Baylor just had some big, major fireworks of their own in the 2025 recruiting class. I mentioned on Monday's show, it was going to be a huge week no matter what, if they got no pen to paper or no commitment graphics or anything. And it didn't start off all that well. We had looked at really two guys, one on each side of the ball. Right, Caleb Burns from Cypress, and then Jacorey Watson from Shadow Creek. The Caleb Burns, the linebacker, commits to Tech on Monday. Not great. Starting the week 0 for 1. Then you get a little bit of a boost. A guy I wasn't talking about, but should have been talking about. The big defensive tackle from Lorena, Jackson Blackwell, one in your own backyard, says yes, he does commit to Baylor. That's a nice pickup. I always talk about how important it is to get those guys in your actual recruiting area. And then we settle on Jacorey Watson. We shift our focus there Tuesday afternoon, and the 4-star receiver commits to Baylor. Big time win for this coaching staff. Is it the end all be all? No one recruit is, I would say. But this is a big step in the right direction. Another one that you're prying over a conference rival and a local rival. I know UH is not challenging for the conference title this year. Neither is Baylor. But you picked a kid from Houston's backyard, even with their new exciting coaching staff and them being in the Big 12 and having more of a seat at the big-time college football table, and you took him. You took one of the most exciting guys from a very fruitful backyard that is Houston and signed him to Baylor instead. He actually picked Baylor over UH and Boston College. I can hear it in the streets here in suburban Boston. They can't believe what's just happened. The lovers are crying and the poets are dreaming. The church bells all are broken on the heights. As he says, the Catholics with all the stairs, no thank you. I'm staying home. I'm enjoying this heat in the summer, and I'm going to hang out with the Baptists on Saturdays in the fall. He is a Baylor Bear. Big time for this 2025 recruiting class. It was one that was reeling, and I'm not saying is up there with one of the very best in the country right now, but adding an elite athlete like Jacorey Watson is a big step towards solidifying that class and certainly helping out this coaching staff. We talked about Jacorey a little bit on Monday. He is coming in as a receiver. He's got some real terrific speed in the open field, but he is playing quarterback at Shadow Creek, or at least was last year. That's one of those guys you just get the ball to whenever you possibly can. And that worked out well for Shadow Creek. He threw for just under 1,000 passing yards, caught for or received through more than 300 rushing yards or receiving yards. There we go. I got it. Had 8 receiving touchdowns. Also had 13 passing touchdowns. 4 on the ground as well, in case you're interested in that. Just an all-time just athlete. 3 syllables, athlete. And that is what this new offense needs more than anything. Again, we saw it in the Art Briles days when they were last running this offense. It wasn't necessarily the most polished possession receivers out there. You had some of those. Obviously, Katie Cannon was one of those for sure. What they were getting were elite athletes that were becoming all conference receivers. I'm thinking about guys like Corey Coleman. I'm thinking about guys like Tevin Reese. I'm thinking about guys like Josh Gordon. Those kind of guys. Even a Kendall Wright. Burners who had some ball skills, who weren't getting recruited at big time football programs. Of course, Jacorey Watson is, but that they were able to thrive in this kind of offense. And that is what you've got once again in Jacorey Watson, a bit more polished than some of those guys, but one who's playing all over the field in high school football in a very competitive pocket of the country for high school football and is dominating. And now you've got him coming to the Baylor Bears. This is another guy. I know I've said this a few times. It's not the case with all Baylor's prospects or all prospects in general, but this is one whose stock is going to rise even more during his senior season. He is a composite 4-star on 247, a low 4-star for whatever that means. He is one who I think you will see on your Twitter feed this year, on your YouTube, on your Dave Campbell's, and you're going to say, whoa, that guy's coming to us? This guy who's juking out everybody in the stadium, who's outrunning whoever's left? That guy? Going to be a Baylor Bear? He sure is. Jacorey Watson, big-time win for this recruiting staff on the offensive side. Jackson Blackwell from Lorena, another bonus on the defensive side, getting some of that Lorena Leopard blood in there with Jaden Porter joining the team this year and going through spring practice. Now Jackson Blackwell as well. Congrats to Dallas Baker. Congrats to Dallas Baker. I can't believe he was able to win that when someone came up to Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts this time of year, had a nice, 75 to 82 degree day up here in the hub and said, nah, I'm going to Baylor. Just like Cam Stewart did all those years ago. Congrats to the Bears and to Jacorey Watson on this big dub. Today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by Gametime. Okay, y'all have heard me on and on about that game I went to in the finals. I have fully not regretted it. And a big reason why is I didn't get fleeced on the tickets. They were expensive, but I didn't get fleeced because I went to Gametime. And Gametime is so upfront with me. I was recommending it to my dad today. He wants to buy Red Sox tickets. Anything you're looking for, whether it's sports, theater, music, comedy, Gametime is the place to go. I said, look, Dad, you go in there, you see the all-in pricing. You're not getting all those hidden fees that you're seeing at other websites, and you don't need to go up to the will call on the day of the game, the ticket booth, like you used to have to do 50 years ago. You can go to Gametime because not only do you have that all-in pricing, but you have flash deals and zone deals going throughout the week. You can see the view from your seats before you hit purchase, and they've got the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime is going to credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And Dad, if you do want to go to a Red Sox game kind of last minute, you can get some awesome last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for anything that you are looking for, and you can do it all the way up till the game is starting. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege, that's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. It is a bittersweet week for some in Big 12 country. Joyous for others. But on Monday, we had to say goodbye to two great friends. And those friends would be the Longhorn Network and the Texas Longhorns themselves. Texas and Oklahoma off to the Big 12. There go two of Baylor's biggest rivals, two of Baylor's top 5 or 6 biggest rivals are out the door. And again, it is the 4th of July tomorrow. It's a very patriotic week. And for me, there are few things more American than rooting against the Texas Longhorns and throwing a good horns down to your neighbor. But the pagans 100 miles south of us in Waco are off to what they believe to be greener pastures. And it got me to thinking, again, there's nothing like beating Texas. It's so much fun. So through this illustrious history of Baylor playing Texas in football, of which, sure, there are more losses than wins, there are some very memorable wins in there. So I wanted to remember the good times as we send Bevo off on his merry way into the SEC. And so what I wanted to do was look at my choice for the top 5 football wins over the University of Texas. Now, I did want to stretch this to all sports, but guys, we don't have all day. Okay. That is far too much to count, because you look at men's basketball, women's basketball. Oh, we could be here all day listing off great Baylor wins over Texas. So instead, I'm keeping it to football. I'm going to try to even the playing field a little bit. And it was tough to pick 5, honestly. There were a couple that just missed the cut that I was like, man, I think I would have liked that on there. But we do have 5, and that's what I'm sticking with. Starting with number 5, starting us off, the 1992 matchup. It was the last regular season game and the last home game for the legendary ball coach, Grant Taff. This was a nail biter. Baylor had to kind of come back at the end. They knew it was going to be an emotional day, because everyone knew Grant Taff had already announced his retirement at the end of the season. They knew it was going to be his last home game, and the Bears came in needing to win this game to go to a bowl. So, it was great that it was Grant Taff's last home game, but they did not want it to be the last game of the season. And so it became this rallying cry of, hey, we've got to get one last win, especially one last win over UT, a program that was so synonymous with Coach Taff's tenure, and not the final game that he coached on this list. And it was a cold, rainy day. I did a story about it for Sports Illustrated's Inside the Bears, the late Inside the Bears, a few years ago. Bears come back to take a 21-20 lead late in the game. They get a crucial 4th down stop from Trooper Traylor. And it was maybe a bit of good luck on the Bears side. Grant Taff did mention to me, it looked like that UT might have got the nose of the football over the 1st down marker, but he said, I think the Longhorns got enough calls through Grant Taff's tenure, 20 years at Baylor. So that one goes Baylor's way. They win it 21-20. Coach Taff is carried off the field. He's got his family down there. It's this whole big celebration. And the Bears go on to play in the Sun Bowl in El Paso and also defeat Arizona to cap off Coach Taff's 21-year tenure with the Bears with an exciting victory. He obviously had maybe the best record of anyone over a real period of time against the Longhorns in Baylor history. Actually had a winning record against UT, which is very special. And that game is one of the 2, I would say, that are very memorable from those times that Grant Taff had on the Brazos. Number 4, let's go back to the year of 2010. Bears 30, Texas Longhorns 22 at DKR. There is a lot of sentimental stuff that goes into this game. And I actually really remember watching this game thinking, oh my goodness, Baylor's actually going to go down to Austin and beat the Longhorns. Now, Baylor was actually, I looked it up and now I don't have it in front of me. I don't believe they were the underdog or the favorite in this game, even though they were ranked. They were number 25. They were 6-2, which is an important number. And Texas was scuffling. This was the year after they lost the national championship game to Alabama. Garrett Gilbert was the quarterback. They'd already lost a couple games by then, but it's Baylor and we're playing at home, right? Because Baylor had not won there since 1989. That was 12 straight losses, and the 11 previous losses were all by at least 3 touchdowns. It was a horror show going down to Austin, but the Bears came in with a kind of swagger that they hadn't had in a long time, because with that 6-2 record, they had clinched their first ever bowl trip and winning season. Well, actually, I didn't clinch the winning season yet, but non-losing season in 16 years. Yeah. 94 was the last time they had gone to a bowl game. Everyone knew at this point that RG3 was a very promising young quarterback. Obviously, he'd been hurt the year before. He comes back. I can still remember Jay Finley running away from everybody, and the Bears stunning Texas in Austin. That was kind of like the next great leap for this fantastic season for the Bears. They had made the bowl game, which they had so long coveted. Then they won in Austin finally. They knew there was a really tough stretch. It was 3 straight ranked teams. If I'm not mistaken, it was Oklahoma State, A&M, Oklahoma. They did lose all 3. But that win still lives in the annals of Baylor football history, and they do get to go to that bowl game for the first time in 16 years, and the rest takes off from there. Heisman, Big 12 championships, dominant teams. I don't know if it starts with that night in Austin, but it kind of feels like it does. Number 3, and one that I absolutely love because of a piece of paraphernalia at a very famous Waco haunt, and that is the 1989 game. The Bears went down to Austin. They were having an okay season, kind of run of the mill. They had not beaten the Longhorns at DKR in 38 years. We were still in the Korean War the last time they had won in Austin, and flash forward to Public Enemy being at the top of the charts and The Simpsons premiering that year. That was the distance between the wins in Austin. And they did it. The Bears did it in just resounding fashion. One of the biggest blowout wins in Baylor history, one of the biggest blowout losses in Texas Longhorn history, especially in Southwest Conference games. 50-7 Baylor over UT. Again, in Austin. First time in 38 years. Now, I don't know that Coach Taft has said this, but I'm pretty certain he said something like, "Gentlemen, I've never won here in Austin. There are a bunch of people who aren't alive anymore that never saw the Bears win in Austin. Let's not make this an exciting one. Let's pound this team into submission." And that's exactly what they did. And now immortalized by a crew neck sweater in Shorty's Pizza Shack, the one just off campus. And my guys running it, Kyle and Christian, if you're hearing me, blank check. I would give you any amount possible to get that crew neck sweater that has the Baylor and Texas football helmets with the score Baylor 50, Texas 7. Because like as up and down, as good as Baylor's been in the time since then, and as bad as UT has been at times since then, I don't know that we're ever going to see a 50-7 down in Austin ever again. It was kind of a perfect storm. There weren't a lot of UT fans in the crowd, especially by the end of the game. Baylor had taken over that stadium, another cold, rainy day, and they just pummeled the Longhorns. I would love to have a t-shirt, a sweatshirt with that forever. Baylor 50, Texas 7. It really does not get much better than that. Oh, but it does, because there's 2 more we still got to go through. All right, let's bump it back into modern times for our number 2 selection. And for a lot of people, especially in my generation, and certainly younger, this will be their number 1 choice. Let's go to 2013. Yep. Case closed. Quasi Big 12 championship game. Baylor 30, Texas 10. Their first conference championship in nearly 20 years. And what a way to close out the 64 season history of the great Floyd Casey Stadium. This day has to be a top 5 or 10 just all around day in Baylor sports history. I was barely tuning into Baylor. I'll admit I was a junior in high school. I was just kind of putting Baylor on my list, so I was tuning in, but the day itself was odd. I was obviously not at the game, but those of you who were, you're still thawing out from it. I mean, in the 20s, I think there was some sleet earlier in the day, just horrendously cold for Central Texas. And what makes it an all-time day is what happened just before it. So again, no Big 12 championship game back then. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Bob Bowlesby, for that. And we were looking at a potential tie here. I mean, Oklahoma State had a great year. They had beaten Baylor. Of course, that was Baylor's only regular season loss. But Bedlam became Bedlam. That game kicked off just before, or ended right before, Baylor, Texas kicked off. And OU went into Stillwater and pulled the upset and beat the Pokes, which put the Bears in pole position. All they needed to do was win, and they are the Big 12 champs. All Texas needed to do was win, and they would be the Big 12 champs. It became like the nation turned its eyes to this game. It was huge. Baylor was young and exciting. They loved the offense. UT was UT. They're this big national brand. And now whoever wins the Big 12. And boy, if it had been 2 years later, it would have been whoever wins goes to the college football playoff. Baylor comes out in those just awesome throwback uniforms, which I wish they would bring back just for a game. The plain green, the plain white pants, the plain gold helmet. It looked awesome. It wasn't the best day for that Bryles offense, but it still got the job done. Running away from the Horns at the end there. 30-10 through the cold. Fans stormed the field. Big 12 champs with the trophy and the signs, and shutting out the lights one last time at Floyd Casey. That is one of the great wins in Baylor football history, no matter the opponent. That one will forever live on in Baylor football lore. I'm going to keep the honorable mentions to just one. I had 2 or 3, but we're running tight on time. I want to give the time for this number one selection. But my honorable mention is going to be the 2011 game, which was RG3's final home game. The game itself isn't anything terribly exciting. UT was good, not great that year. Baylor was good, not great that year. But as we know, 2011, 2012, year of the Bear. I mean, excitement and vibes are at an all-time high. Baylor wins it 45-24. It's a big game for RG3. And really what it does is it solidifies his Heisman Trophy. I tend to think he did that with the win over Oklahoma a few weeks before. But the way, they kind of capped off the season, again, I mean, first time back-to-back wins over UT in forever. Texas was good enough that they could have been a bogey team and kind of ruined the party for Baylor. And RG3 and the rest of his great Baylor Bears team did not let that happen. Kendall Wright did not let that happen. Terrence Williams didn't let it happen. None of them did. And they blew out the Longhorns. And obviously there was that famous question to RG3 after the game, do you think you did enough to win the Heisman Trophy? And he says, I think Baylor University just won their first Heisman Trophy. That was a fun day. Just missing the list, though. Just missing, because there was also that great emotion for Grant Taft. So it's tough to pick, like, whose more emotional day are you going to pick on the list? I picked Grant Taft over RG3, but you could have had either one in there, I think. And number one, the great game with a name in Baylor football history. That is, of course, the Miracle on the Brazos, 1974, Baylor 34, Texas 24. This team is going to be honored. That was announced yesterday that the 74 Bears team will be honored at McLean this year on September the 14th. That is one that, unfortunately, for a lot of younger generations, does get forgotten because it was a long time ago, and we don't have a lot on film or anything like that. But that 74 team means more to Baylor football history than almost any of them. And the miracle on the Brazos is a huge reason why. But you guys know kind of the legend of that. I actually have a T-shirt from home field. I don't have it with me, unfortunately. But Bears are down 24-7 at halftime. It's looking just like another routine shellacking at the hands of the Texas Longhorns. And Texas had won 16 straight in that rivalry. Bears are a young and plucky team, but are kind of getting set in their place by Darrell K. Royal's Longhorns. They have a young coach in Grant Taff in his third year, trying to find his footing with the Bears, unproven guy out of Angelo State, hitting the big time in the Southwest Conference. And the Bears just have a monster of a second half, because at halftime, the great Coach Taff allegedly ate a worm in front of his teammates now, or in front of his team. Now, they've all kind of corroborated that story. The message, I don't exactly remember. He ate a live worm in front of the team, and the Bears came out, scored 27 unanswered. They beat the Longhorns. They tear down the goalposts. They bring them all the way back to campus from Floyd Casey. They leave the lights on in the scoreboard all night for fans to revel in this unthinkable victory over the old rivals from Texas. And this also came up in my interview with Coach Taff a few years ago. And the part that stuck with me wasn't just all that other stuff and the worm and the goalposts and all that. But he said, Darrell Royal, after all the hoopla, came into Baylor's locker room after the game and told Coach Taff, he said, a lot of people are going to say this is a fluke. And let me tell you, this was not a fluke. You're a heck of a ball coach with a heck of a team here. And they proved it was not a fluke, which was, I think, maybe even more than the miracle on the Brazos. And what that signified was that the Bears went out there, Steve Beard and the gang won the Southwest Conference that year. First conference title in 50 years. The Believe It Bears going to the Cotton Bowl. It did a lot of things for Baylor football history. It really legitimized Grant Taff. Not that he was necessarily on the hot seat, but it kind of got momentum going, and he wins a couple more conference titles. 1980, one of the great Baylor teams ever. This is kind of the building blocks for some good Baylor teams at the end of the 70s and into the mid 80s, and again in the early 90s. So that a lot of that comes from the confidence of finally beating Texas. 16 straight losses to the Longhorns, and they pulled a miracle, but they ended up winning the conference, and UT did not. So huge day for the Bears. Obviously, miracle on the Brazos is still might be the most memorable game in Baylor football history. It's right up there. And that, for me, and for most of you, I'm sure, is the number one win over the Texas Longhorns. UT, we hate to see you go, because it is fun beating you. It really is. Anyway, let me know what you think about what is your number one choice. Did I miss one on the list that means a lot to you? Drop that down in the comments below, how you feel about this 74 team being honored. I can't wait. I hope it's not 130 degrees, but I'm guessing it will be in mid-September. Drop that down in the comments below, and where you think this Baylor football recruiting class is for 2025 and what that's going to mean for Dave Aranda in his future. Get involved in that comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell. We will drop a new podcast to you 3 times a week in the summer here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll see you after the holiday. Happy 4th of July, everyone. This is Locked On Baylor.